And welcome to Hannity tonight. 2016 Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is in a major war of words with his Republican rival, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, over who's to blame for the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Now, here's what Trump has been saying in recent days.
I think I'm much more competent than all of them. When you talk about George Bush, I mean, say what you want, the World Trade Center came down during his time. I would have been much different, I must tell you. Somebody said, well, it wouldn't have been any different. Well, it would have been. I am extremely, extremely tough on illegal immigration. I'm extremely tough on people coming into this country. I believe that if I were running things, I doubt those families would have, I doubt that those people would have been in the country.
Jeb said we were safe during his reign. That wasn't true. And that's the only thing I pointed out. And I'm not blaming anybody, and I'm not blaming George Bush. Although, if you look at his three primary agencies, they hated each other. They weren't talking. It wasn't that they weren't talking by mistake. They hated each other. Well, and a good leader would have made sure they get along and they talk.
And here's part of Governor Bush's response to Donald Trump.
I have grave doubts, to be honest with you, and it's only because of the things he says. It looks as though he's not taking the responsibility, the possibility of being president of the United States really seriously.
Here to respond to more details, 2016 Republican presidential candidate, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. Governor, good to see you. That question that you were answering is whether or not you trust Donald Trump to have his finger on our nuclear arsenal. And your answer was no.
Look, I mean, you have the Palestinian uprising incited by the Palestinian Authority. You have Syria in complete disarray. You have Iran interests in the region on the run. Russia now has as much or more influence than the United States in the region. And we need a steady hand. We need someone that understands the grave threats and America's leadership in the world. And his view of history is just wrong. The simple fact is that when we were attacked, my brother created an environment where for 2,600 days we were safe. No one attacked us again. And he changed the laws, he did everything necessary, he united the country, and he kept us safe. And just a tip of the hat to that, and moving on to what the threats are today is what we ought to be focused on. Donald Trump is not a serious candidate as it relates to foreign policy.
Yeah, does that mean that we've had this big issue about whether or not every Republican candidate would support the eventual nominee? Would that mean if you don't trust him to have his finger on the nuclear button that you wouldn't support him if he became the nominee?
Sean, all I said was I have grave doubts, and that's what campaign's about. He can convince the American people that he's capable of being the commander-in-chief, but I think he has to show that he's capable. It's not just all about him. It's about policies. It's about a strategy. It's about understanding how the world works and how American leadership matters. Look at Syria. In the last month, Donald Trump has said, let ISIS take out Assad. And then he says, let Russia take out ISIS. He was happy that Russia is in Syria. That is not in our strategic interest to allow Russia to gain influence. They're barrel bombing the innocents in Syria. This problem is cascading out throughout the region. There are millions of refugees heading towards Europe. You can't expect the Soviet Union, whose only objective is to prop up its client state, Assad, to take out ISIS. That's not their intention. And this lack of understanding of how the world works is what the problem is.
I want to ask you as it relates to, I think this is an important question because if we don't learn from the mistakes in the past, I would argue we're doomed to repeat them. And you're right, when you talk about all the different issues that are going on in the world right now, it's a pretty scary time in my opinion. In my first book, which I wrote in 2002, Let Freedom Ring, I actually described how Mansour Ijaz tried to broker a deal between the U.S. and Sudan where literally the Sudanese were offering, they wanted sanctions lifted, and they offered bin Laden on a silver platter. In a speech before the Long Island Business Authority, an old friend of mine, Matt Crossan, actually asked Bill Clinton about this issue, and I'm going to play it for you. And here's what he said.
Mr. bin Laden used to live in Sudan. He was expelled from Saudi Arabia in 91 and he went to Sudan. And we did it. When the Sudanese wanted America to start dealing with them again, they released him. At the time, 96, he had committed no crime against America, so I did not bring him here because we had no basis on which to hold him. So we knew he wanted to commit crimes against America. So I pleaded with the Saudis to take him, because they could have, but they thought it was an hot potato, and they didn't, and that's why I wound up in Afghanistan.
If If Bill Clinton knew he wanted to commit crimes against America and was offered him and he didn't take them, isn't that in and of itself a legal basis to take the guy? I mean, if we're going to really delve into this issue, that seems to me like an admission.
I think there's two ways to look at Islamic terrorism. One is a threat that has to be taken out as it relates to creating a strategy that calls it a war, or we view it as a law enforcement operation where people have rights. I think the Clinton administration made a mistake of thinking bin Laden had to be viewed from a law enforcement perspective. Similarly, President Obama's policies seem to be focused on that as well. This is a war against Western civilization. And without the United States leadership, this will be a problem for generations to come. And I think we need to be much more forceful, both here to protect the homeland as well as overseas, to create a strategy to unite the world against this grave threat. And I don't believe Donald Trump has the capability of doing that.
You see the backlash emerging now in Europe over the refugee problem from Syria and Iraq. And the president said he's going to bring in 250,000 refugees into this country. My fear is, and our National Intelligence Director, James Clapper, said that ISIS in Iraq will infiltrate the refugee population. If that's the case, I don't think we can risk taking one refugee in, although we can help probably on a humanitarian basis. What's your position on that?
The principal thing we should focus on is the strategy to take out Assad and to take out ISIS. And I laid out that strategy 2 months ago, where we create a no-fly zone and a safe haven for a force where both Europe and the Arab world would unite behind a force that was well-trained, where our air support could make a difference. That's the way to restrict the number of refugees leaving. We can't take 250,000 refugees. I've never heard that, and that would be impossible to imagine logistically for us to screen. And it's going to be a huge problem from Europe as well. Russia has made this worse, and Donald Trump believes that Russia's presence is a good thing in Syria. It just makes no sense at all. Well, he's running for president of the United States. He should be commander-in-chief. He's running for commander-in-chief. He should have a policy that projects America's leadership and presence in the world, not to applaud Putin for filling our void.
Let me ask you two other foreign policy questions, because I think they're important. One is the president now signing off on this whole Iranian deal. They get $150 billion, spin their centrifuges. We got nothing out of the deal. 24 days notice for inspections. They build their ICBMs. They build missile defense. They get more conventional weapons. That, coupled with John Kerry last week, here Israelis are getting killed, and he tried to create a moral equivalency between Palestinian terrorists and Israel. What are your reactions to those two specific, I think, huge mistakes?
Well, first, they go hand in glove, because legitimizing the Iranian regime to now empower them to continue to be the largest sponsor of terrorism in the world, which is what we've done in an unverifiable agreement, is only sending fear throughout the region, and Israel correctly views this as an existential threat. I don't believe it's necessarily a coincidence that the Palestinian Authority is inciting violence against innocent Israelis. We have some say as it relates to the Palestinian Authority, given the fact that we provide aid, and we should be very clear that there is no moral equivalence, that inciting terror inside of Israel is not the equivalency of what Israel does in self-defense. They do this in their schools to incite a feeling of hatred towards Israel. Israel is responding as any sovereign nation would. We should be completely on their side on this. And frankly, the next president of the United States ought to be getting Israel's back. We need to make sure that we continue to support Israel, providing them with the most sophisticated equipment to create a deterrent effect as it relates to Iran. I think one of the ways to do it is to show our support for Israel.
We have a few political issues emerging. The latest on Joe Biden getting in. Hillary Clinton's got a big showdown with the Benghazi Select Committee, and the Republicans can't seem to find a speaker. Thoughts on all three?
Well, I think Joe Biden will be a strong candidate for sure. It'll be interesting to see as they trip over themselves to move to the left. It creates a huge opportunity for us to be able to regain the center with conservative principles and conservative policies, drawing people towards our cause. So I'm excited about that. I hope they have a fierce primary battle. And as it relates to the speakership, hopefully that'll sort itself out soon. And finally, what was the last question?
About Hillary, the Benghazi Select Committee.
Hillary, yeah. The idea that she thinks that this is a joke, that she literally laughs out loud when it's brought up about her emails and about Benghazi, when there's an FBI investigation and a congressional inquiry that's run by an honorable man, Trey Gowdy, that's not politicizing this, I think shows how vulnerable she is.
Right,
and I hope that the committee shows that.
All right, so if you have grave doubts about Trump and the nuclear weapon, do you have grave doubts about who would you rather have with their finger on the button, Obama, Trump, or Hillary, or do all three scare you?
No, look, I'd rather have the Republican nominee. That's who I'd rather have. I'm a loyal Republican. I've been that way for a long while.
All right, Governor, good to see you again. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.